So as Laura Bell very kindly introduced, I am Ahrthyh. My pronouns are she, her, they, them, and I'm from the Y in Kijibuktuk, Greater Halifax, Dartmouth. And I would just like to take a few minutes, as much as I can, to encourage folks to look at the lands that we are on today. And I would like to recognize that I'm here today in Managwask, St. John, on the ancestral territory of the Wolastoqey, as part of my ongoing observance as well as learning of the peace and treaty friendships signed between the colonial governments and the Wabanaki nations. I'm sharing some, not all, of the resources that I use in my own learning journey. The first, El Nui Suti app, Mi'kmaq, is actually a language learning app that you can download in Android or iPhones, and it's a content that can be used in first-person singular. I found it extremely useful to use in school settings with adults, and I've been on hiking trails where I found a sign with Mi'kmaq, French, and English, and if I wanted to find out what the letter means, I can just look it up in the app, and it was extremely helpful to know what was the context of the land in that space at the given time. And since I am a visitor on this land today, I also would like to encourage you to look at Paskutumukadi Wolastoqey language portal. Similarly, it is a digital dictionary where you can use to learn the Paskutumukadi Wolastoqey language. The best part is it comes with a pronunciation guide and conversational guides by several speakers and elders who speak the Paskutumukadi Wolastoqey. So it kind of felt like I was actually listening to elders having conversations with each other. It felt quite lovely to hear that. Lastly but not least, the treaty education. It is an initiative that came out of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission by the New Brunswick Department of Education and Early Childhood Development in order to teach treaty education in schools. So the current materials that are available are for grade 3, 4, and 5. And I encourage you to go look at it all, but the resource that I have here is specifically on how to learn a bit more around interconnectedness of lives, place, and histories by looking at the three rivers, specifically the Wolastoq or St. John River. They also have some materials on the Mi'kmaq, Restigouche, and Miramichi as well. So depending on which lands you're currently living on, you can explore it based on the interest that you have. And I also would like to recognize that I come from a land where African Nova Scotian folks of over 50 communities have been part of part of Mi'kmaq that's known as Nova Scotia for over 400 years. We are blessed with one of the oldest African Nova Scotian communities ever. And I also want to recognize that it is a very wonderful time of the year, given that it's a African Heritage Month, to go and look at all the resources that are especially being highlighted. Here I have a resource that I have used continuously from the Halifax Public Library, but I'm also very sure that there are many other resources that are available here locally and in the spaces that you come from. So yeah, thank you. And I was having a conversation with some of the settlement organizations that are from different parts within the region, and someone looked at me and said, which I hear all the time, I did not know that Y did settlement programs. So we are very much often associated with health and fitnesses. And if you look at our current communication and marketing videos, yes, you will first see the swimming pool. So I get it. I really, truly get it. So within the Atlantic region itself, we have at least 13 independent YMCA associations that's operating currently. And some of us do offer settlement services, and that does not even include the number of the YWCAs that's operating here. So some of the work that I do within my organization, YMCA Immigrant Services, part of the Greater Halifax Dartmouth, in my program, we have 3 pillars. There's the first being education and awareness. So that's the reason why I'm here today. I love having conversations, so it worked out well with my personality. And secondly, we have programming, which also includes mobile crisis intervention. So in addition to creating programming spaces, I also have one-on-one services where I meet with folks who may need crisis support. And then I work with the community organization partners, as well as folks within my organization in order to provide support to them. And thirdly, but not the least, which I'm absolutely grateful for the folks who came up with the idea in the first place, we have something that we call community relationship or connections. So it's a space and a framework where it's part of the program's outcome to continuously have at least 4 partner organizations for you to like create events every year, or to provide programming, or to continuously introduce your clients to them, and vice versa. And I'm very, very proud to say that I work very closely with Rainbow Refugee Association of Nova Scotia. I work with a community-based research center that's located within Halifax, as well as you mentioned, Queer Up Halifax, and a coalition that's very, very close to my heart, which I got to know through Rainbow Refugee Association of Nova Scotia, called From Borders to Belonging. I highly encourage you to go and look up their website. They have many different resources, and also will introduce you to the different organizations who are working with queer and trans immigrants, newcomers, and refugee folks, and what are the different unique experiences and challenges that they have in those settings. I would also very quickly do a bit of a shout out to the variety of programs that happen within our organization and that we have representations with. So we have the YRich representative, Rachel Smith. So we have over at least 5 offices across the provinces. Do you know the exact number?
In total, there's 11 settlement sites and 13 language sites.
Yes, 11 settlement sites and 13 language sites. In that point, we have at least 5 different program services, as well as curriculum services. And today we also have our crisis prevention and integration person, one of them, Naeem. And we also have our youth outreach lead, Saeed. So we're very well represented. We are here strongly together. And so if you have any questions, if you want to connect with folks who do that work in this room, please reach out to them. And some other services that we do provide is gender-based violence that's both national and local. We have just recently started Health Professional Transition Support Project. And we have Saturday Study Skills, which is an event that happens on every Saturday for folks who are not youth, below the age of 12. And I mentioned earlier, I also work with elders and seniors. They are the folks that we support through our active living program, a program that's quite dear to my heart because they work with many different backgrounds of folks and ages. So those are just a few. I haven't even mentioned the other projects and the departments that we do. So please go to our website and check it out. I have a poster that has been struggling with the gravity in the back, but I would be more than happy to share it in the research package through ARAISA. And it's basically what Rhiannon shared earlier. So it's the conversation around what are the challenges. It's actually from an interview that we did with a number of our participants, and they talked a bit about what are some of the things that they weren't getting from mainstream 2SLGBTQIA organization and mainstream settlement organizations. Some of the things that they were saying, I just want to quote them, is I don't see queer newcomer represented in the settlement services. Another thing that they said, that how can I ensure my confidentiality if I need to absolutely come out to a staff who's from the same culture community? This is something that Kimberly mentioned earlier. Another example from mainstream 2SLGBTQIA space, they said that Unfortunately, often anti-religious sentiments make me extremely uncomfortable and feel that I had to choose between my faith and my sexual identity, and I could not be completely me. So we have highlighted some best practices that I welcome you to look at for your own organization and your own personal practices. So some of the things that came out pretty strongly in Kim and Rhiannon and Orlando's presentation was social isolation. And the reason why I almost clapped too loudly during your presentation is because when queer and trans newcomers are trying to build those relationships and friendships, they are torn between needing to also learn how to connect with folks who are Canadians, who have been here for a very long time. Someone had a brilliant question or point earlier on around, oh, I learned that just because they're a newcomer doesn't mean that they haven't been here for a very long time. So there is several terms that is being used, which does not help with understanding some of these challenges. The newcomer term is often used for folks who have been in the country for 5 years or less. So I'm technically at my 6th or 7th, I think. So I'm now an immigrant. But then I'm also, someone who's also an immigrant is someone who's been here for 25 years. And they can be a second-generation immigrant. And then one of the most amazing things that happened when we tried to bring people together beyond funding restricted eligibility. So we had an external funding. So we brought everyone who's ARAISA funded. We brought temporary workers. We brought temporary resident permit holders, meaning students, migrant workers. When they came into the picture, as much as it was amazing that we could connect with folks with any background and any educational background, socioeconomic status, class, guess what? Folks who have had university background did not necessarily speak at the same comprehension level as a refugee who had just arrived in the past few months, who don't even know like what to say in those rooms. First, when we think about building relationship, we are thinking about language. Again, as Syed mentioned yesterday, you could be speaking the same language, but the accent or the interpretation of the regional differences can be a barrier. But the other thing that I wanted to highlight that came to my mind was definitely around ethnicity differences. You could come from the same country that's experiencing war, but just because you're a queer person or a trans person doesn't mean that you don't harbor similar prejudices to another ethnicity. So that is also an inter-barrier between the communities who are trying to build those relationships within these spaces. Now, if you're a part of like a larger community where you're not afraid of being who you are, i.e. being a cisgender person, being a heterosexual person, you can pick and choose your friends. But when you're in a group where you are literally limited to like, I need to be respected for my sexual identity. I need to be respected for my gender diverse identity, but I'm also wanting to be able to eat the food that my mom made that tastes like what my friends made. I want to be able to speak the same language. Okay, the same language. You don't really get to pick that. You have to do the hard work in challenging your internal place that you are at, right? So that's also another additional layer. In addition to having learning English, French, finding a job. And with regards to youth, Kim mentioned something about the process of outing. And also our other speakers have been talking a bit about what it means to not necessarily experiencing gender diversity and sexual orientation in the same way here. I was at a Gender and Sexuality Alliance club, and it was such a sweet gathering. It was during one of their breaks. And there was 2 of us there, and we were talking a bit about what it means to be an adult who looked like us. We were both racialized. I was a non-binary person, the other person was a lesbian woman. And then we were talking a bit about the difficulties in our schools from where we came from and how we are here today and how we have come to be who we are. And those young people, we went in there thinking they were gonna ask us like, what does this mean? Or like, what did that experience look like? And when we asked them, what is it that you want? Like, what do you need? they just looked at me and said, actually, when we meet next time, can we have like nice colors and lights and have the lights off and have some blankets and some plushies? And I'm like, okay, talking about accessibility, right? There were so many things in the room that was not being seen. Here we were in the library because we were trying to create what we thought was the safer space so that they are able to have access to a space where people are not going to ask them, where are you going? I'm going to the library during the break. So they can do that. They can participate in the Gender and Sexuality Alliance with some level of anonymity and privacy and confidentiality. Because if they went into a space that was called Gender and Sexuality Alliance, people in the community are going to be talking because they're going to school with their siblings. They're going to schools with their neighbors' kids. They're going to school with their cousins, right? So we thought that might help with anonymity. Then we realized we still had a bit more work to do. And you know what were some of the other questions that they asked? They asked what was my favorite animal. And so they literally just wanted to get to know us as people. And they were curious to see how we came to be into ourselves as an adult. They just needed us to be there in all the affirming ways that we needed to be. Another person, when I walked into the room, she looked like me, not from where I came from, but we had the same skin color, just was absolutely happy to see someone who looked like her. She did not stop smiling. I think that's what her pronouns were. She didn't share it. And just was hand up in the air the entire time, had so many questions, was just bursting with joy just because there's more people who look like her in the room, which was not the case in that school. That's just one example. Also around xenophobia, which is a prejudice against folks who come from different countries, and racism. I had a situation where this was during Pride Month, and the counselor in the school called me and said, Ahrthyh, so we have a Pride display and we are having some issues from some parents who say that we are trying to indoctrinate their kids. This goes back to what Orlando was talking about, as if like we are all like influenced by Western cultures. No, we have been around forever. So they're like, why are you doing these things in the school? Like, you are going to like change my kids' minds about these things, right? And then we were talking a bit about some of the framework we talked was around legal, recognizing that Nova Scotia Rights, Human Rights Act ensures that anyone of any background, regardless of age, should have access to information, should have access to education, equal education, right? And we also then help them to talk a bit about how can we encourage them to look at resources and rather like respond in a way that encourages dialogue with you rather than shutting down the conversation. Another example we had was a young person went to their teacher and said, I'm not allowed to be in gender and inclusive sex education classes because my parents didn't allow me to be in here. First of all, we don't have enough people to monitor kids who are not in classes. That's the case in Nova Scotia, at least. Secondly, this teacher was a queer person. So when they heard that, and the young person also said that I don't believe in queerness. I don't believe in gender diversity. I don't believe in diverse sexual orientations and sexual characteristics. This person was very hurt. The teacher was extremely hurt and dealt with it very nicely with the young person. However, in the break room, with other colleagues said that these people are all very backwards. So I'm sharing this example to just share that someone who's feeling harmed can also perpetuate harm. So that's just an example to get us to think a bit about. And in context of a rural environment, one of the persons that I worked with to talk a bit about what it means to have less diversity, because we do talk about it, oh my gosh, I haven't moved my slides. So when we talk about in the context of less diversity, we just think about race, but we also kind of need to think a bit about class. We need to also think a bit about accessibility around like what CM said around like transport, for example, and support for individual persons compared to students, compared to persons who came by themselves. This person was a 19-year-old when they came from a war-torn country, and they ended up in a rural environment. And then when I met them, they came up to me and said, Ahrthy, I don't get this. Why do everyone call me a Black person? Like, what the heck? I'm not a Black person. I became a Black person after I came here. I've always known myself only as a Nigerian person. And then they also was like, when I started to talk a bit more about it, they said that a lot of folks around them didn't quite get what they were talking about. And I said, I had a friend who told me about this, and I did my homework, so I don't entirely get, because I'm not in your shoes, but I understand what you mean, what it feels like to be other and to be labeled. And that's when they opened up and said, and to be honest with you, I don't get the whole LGBT thing because that's not what I connect with. I am a person who looks like a man, and I have a person who looks like a man partner, but I don't feel like a gay. Like, I don't connect with that label. Why do I feel like when I go into those LGBTQIA organizations, I need to take on those labels in order to be able to even have conversations. And actually on that note, some of the young persons that I was talking with, they also said that they've been thinking a bit about what it means to be a gender diverse person, a queer person in their own culture. For me, when I started doing this work, I finally had the ability to be able to sit down and think about it, because I'm not worrying so much before as I was as an international student, like, you know, keeping a roof over my head, or like making sure I had money and paying international student fee. I was able to actually go and look for what pronouns meant in my mother tongue. And that felt very liberating. So I also just want to highlight and end with the fact that a single person's journey can include all these challenges. And we have to look at, this is an institutional, we have been talking quite a bit around like the general part, but at an institutional level, look at physical considerations. What bathrooms do you have, right? This was the conversations that we had a few years ago in our work. We don't own the building. We cannot do any renovations. On top of that, the bathrooms that we have is shared with public. So we have no call whatsoever in terms of like labeling. So what we did was we did the best we could. We had a makeshift sign that said a single, no, not universal, but single stall washrooms, or like universal washrooms, or like family-friendly washrooms, so that folks will be able to actually shift the conversation towards beyond the binary. Steps matter. Talking a bit about, my colleagues have already shared about in-person, intake and administration. I think one person said that if you're a challenge, if you don't know who someone's parents are, instead of saying mom and dad, say guardian. So that's a first step. Communications and marketing. Who's in your pictures? Right? Making sure that the language that you have recognizes the diversity in gender, sexuality, and sexual characteristics and sexual orientation. Programming. We have talked a bit about after hours, but also talking a bit about what does after hours mean for the staff in your office? Because when we are working with queer and trans folks, safety is first and foremost. Are they having, did they get any training in conflict de-escalation? Because conflicts can happen in the room. It doesn't have to come just from the outside. And can you have those conversations? Because if you don't have those conversations, once a person has felt harmed, they're not coming back. And you don't want them to lose those accesses to services and fall through the gap. And being able to have those services available to frontline workers and not just like to the person who's doing the programming also matters. This is one of my favorites. And I also have to invite a little bit of like flexibility with it. There are not everyone who will be willing to answer the questions, but it's okay to ask questions and ask them to folks who are willing to do the answering. Like, I'm here to answer. I'm paid to do this answering. Ask them, seek them. This is where you need to partner with organizations like Rainbow Refugee Association or Nova Scotia, or with someone who does the work already in your settlement services. And if they are not able to meet, work along with them. Make the work, meet them in halfway, because the truth is, oftentimes than not, as Kim and I have been talking about, we tend to be the kind of like the one or two people in the office with a lot of support from their managers who are already like supporting 11 other programs. So like also meet them halfway and try to like work together, that it's not just an event during Pride, but like an ongoing services. So that's another way of doing it. Thank you. I have some business cards on the table. Please, 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 if you need any training, it might take me like 3 months to eventually deliver the training, but I will be there, I'll do it. Reach out to me, I can travel anywhere to get the work done, to get the training done. And also, just want to encourage continuing conversations, so please come and ask me questions and enjoy your lunch. Thank you.